Hello, and welcome to the Love Mia Vita podcast. I'm Jerry DiPiano, CEO of FemPharma. Thank you for joining me as we discuss all things women's health and wellness. Please note that this information is simply that. It's information to help you to think through your decisions. Please consult your medical practitioner to discuss your personal situation. Thank you. Hello again. This is Jerry DiPiano, and I am the CEO of FemPharma. And today I am with Steve Bollinger, who is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Ovala/Revive. You ask what Revive is, and today we're going to talk about stress urinary incontinence, but we're going to share information about Steve Bollinger's background, because for those of you that tune in regularly, you know that I interview many women CEOs, leaders, and healthcare practitioners. But today I'm interviewing a Renaissance guy, and you'll understand why when Steve shares his background. So Steve Bollinger, welcome to the Love Mia Vita podcast.
Hey, Jerry, it's fantastic. Thanks. I really appreciate it and looking forward to our conversation today.
So Steve, this is your third company.
Fourth
company. Okay, so I misspoke. So perhaps you can share a bit about your background, why you decided to pursue women's healthcare companies, because again, this isn't your first rodeo.
Yeah, absolutely. Organically, I went. I went to the United States Military Academy for my education and got a mechanical engineering degree. My first life, I played soldier. Was in the Gulf War. Did the Airborne Ranger thing. I thought I was a lifetime soldier, and I was very happy. But when I got back from my last deployment, my lovely wife, fiance wife at the time, said, "Hey, Steve, it's either me or Uncle Sam." And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to choose my lovely wife." So in 1991, I got out of the military, and I've been in the life science industry, I guess now for the last 34 years, and I'm still married to my same wife for 34 years. In fact, our 35th is coming up next week. So I think I made the right decision, but healthcare has been very, very exciting to me. So from the perspective of medicine, I worked in a cardiovascular company. I did orthopedics. I did interventional radiology and cardiology. I've done plastic reconstructive surgery. What ended up happening was there was a company that was very interested in me to turn them around, a company called Byron Medical at the time, plastic reconstructive company. So I joined that company, and I was more of an operational lead. I wrote regulatory documents for the FDA. I did product innovation, chose new vendors, and I was blessed to sell that company back to my old boss, and that really got me spurred on to, innovation and making a difference in healthcare. At the beginning of my career, I was spending a lot of time with the OBGYNs in surgery, and the doctor I chose with my wife ended up, seeing my wife. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I'm listening to women and couples talk about infertility, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy, right? Everyone is trying to bridge the gap between natural intercourse and IUI and IVF, and I just didn't know what to do, and I said, I'm going to fix this problem. And weirdly enough, that was back in like 1997, and actually 94, right? Back in 1994. So this is now 2010, and I said, listen, where's medicine going? Can I bridge this gap in medicine? So medicine's been changing. It's been evolving dramatically over the last, 30, 40 years. It's constantly evolving. And then the patient continuum of care started changing. What does that mean? They were changing, right? With the internet and the change in how we consume healthcare, patients started losing faith in medicine, right? And trust was slowly being separated. So I'm like, all right, a lot of stuff going on in my head. And then they started changing reimbursement. So when I looked at that, I said, okay, patients have access to technology today, but it's being limited. So that's really sparked an interest in me. And then I looked at trends in holistic care and wellness. And I said, all right, health insurances are reducing coverage. Women, again, now we're starting to talk women, start leading self-assessment, self-diagnosing, self-treating. They're looking for help. I'm like, wow, why are women doing this more than men, right? And when you look at women, again, this is all in light, in a light conversation, is women go through about 7 unique phases of life. Men go through 2, puberty and midlife crisis. So women, when they start at age 13 on preventative health care, and by the time the female hits 21, 22, they're telling doctors, that doesn't work. I want this. That's the wrong antibiotic. That doesn't react well with me. They have really changed the dynamics of integration. So with the health care insurance reduction, doctors' lack of time, right? They're not really sharing and communicating with the patient, especially the female. You may go in with a laundry list of 7 issues you wish to talk about, but the healthcare provider is saying, give me the top 3. What are crises that I can address today? And then, we're starting to have children later on in life. That's affecting a lot about our dynamics as a woman. And then when I looked at all that, I said, what if I could bridge the gap in infertility? I created a company called Renova Women's Health. We've created a product called the Stork. Again, it was condom-like collection, tampon-like delivery. And this has really got me tying into women's health. Now I'm having serious conversations with women with this product. And in 2019, we sold that company. So now we've still had our telephone line up. We sold the company, but we're getting this interaction from customers saying, hey, Steve, in a whimsical way, hey, Steve, thanks for getting me pregnant. Now every time I cough, sneeze, or dance, I tinkle in my pants. Why don't you solve that problem? I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that existed, right? So then I created Ovala and the Revive product. And again, this was all triggering an evolution about stress urinary incontinence. Basically, no longer the urethra can no longer support is no longer supported. So unintentional loss of urine. So that triggered me into this new company, which I run today, and I'm actually very excited about it because incontinence is both a physiological opportunity to solve a problem and has psychological impact, right? And I think our society doesn't understand that, right? So if your activity-induced leakage, right, again, you start thinking about reduction of quality of life, diminished sense of freedom, fear of social embarrassment, right? All these things are so impactful. So if I could solve a problem with a physiological device to have a psychological impact, what that gives me is a quality of life company. And that's kind of, I don't know how I got here, right? I navigated all around. I've been, I've been a sales rep. I've been a marketing person. I've been a chief operation officer. I've been a CEO in multiple companies. But women's health is so intriguing to me that this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So I'm working on other products and everything else, but this is kind of why I think, Jerry brought me on, is to say that, hey, we think about these things too for you.
So there are smart men. You just heard from one, and smart men understand that there's enormous value to solving problems for women, the largest demographic. So we know that we're more than 50% of the world's population. And as we age, we become an even greater percentage of that demographic, and we control the spending. So wise man knows that we need to do more for women. And because of his technology background and the expertise that he has in starting companies, of course, he was going to start a women's healthcare company because that's where the real value resides. And it comes down to something that you said earlier, Steve, which is this is stress urinary incontinence, and there are 3 different types of incontinence. Stress, there's urge, and then there's mixed. And so when you think about stress incontinence, it's mostly a pelvic floor issue and the fact that you can't support the urethra. And we're going to have more discussion on stress urinary incontinence from a scientific and medical perspective. But the idea being that this is a problem that is experienced not just by older women. This can be a problem that is experienced by women athletes. This is a problem that can be experienced by women who are in perimenopause, menopause, postpartum. So there are lots of different factors that can lead to stress urinary incontinence. Different from overactive bladder, which is where the bladder, you do have increased number of bathroom visits, which technically are called micturitions. And you may have incontinence episodes, so you pee your pants. But it is more about bladder capacity than anything else. And pharmacology is an area where this can be helpful, along with bladder training. But pharmacology is where most healthcare practitioners want to go. And then there's mixed, which is a combination of the stress and the overactive bladder. But Steve developed a very cool solution for women. I always say, I didn't want to grow up wearing a diaper at a certain age, right? And yet, stress urinary incontinence may be an issue that we face as we engage in different physical activities, as I mentioned, or after we have children, or as we age. So
Yeah,
it's
honestly, one third of women between 30 and 60 have this. One third. That's 18 million women go to a doctor and are diagnosed with stress urinary incontinence. And you know what? Most doctors say, hang in there, kiddo. When it gets bad enough, let me know. It's just part of life. And to me, that's unacceptable, right? If I have a cut in my hand, I want a Band-Aid, right? If I have a headache, I want an aspirin. If I have a knee ache, I want a cortisone injection. I don't want to suffer. I want to have good quality of life. And the challenge is this is such a slow creeping disease state. It starts slowly, like you start laughing with a group of friends and you go, oh, I'm crossing my legs because something's happening down there. And then it evolves and then it becomes a creep factor and you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to do anything about it. And then everyone is telling you it's just part of life. Well, there's a lot of things that are a part of life, but having a headache and taking an aspirin is a good solution, right? So why don't we take proactive care in women's health? And everybody knows somebody that has this, because not only does it start with stress urinary incontinence, but as we age and the organs of the female, as we hit perimenopause and menopause, get smaller because the blood flow is reduced, we start evolving into prolapse. And prolapse is another disease state in this area that our product Revive can actually have impact on. So again, we're talking about now over 30 million women in the United States are suffering with this. And you know what standard of care is? Pads and liners. That's miserable. In fact, my wife and I are always having a conversation about this, and we found that women go to parties and are pad smugglers. And I'm like, what's a pad smuggler? And she goes, well, when I go to a party, here's what I have to do, right? I start interacting with friends. We start laughing. I start crossing my legs. All right, I wet myself. Now what I got to do is I got to go to the bathroom. I'm in this nice house. I'm with friends and family. And in this process, what ends up happening is I got to change the pad out. I don't want to flush it because it could probably occlude the toilet. And I don't want to put it in the trash because usually she's dehydrated and it's odorous, right? So she doesn't want to put in a trash can. So she puts it in a Ziploc bag, zips it up, and takes it on its way. So we call them pad smugglers. So everyone knows someone that's dealing with this. And it doesn't just impact the individual female, it impacts their family, their kids, their friends, and everyone around them because they start changing their habits. And this is why we should not ignore early stage disease states until they're catastrophic and we have to have surgery. We have to be able to bridge these gaps in healthcare. And a lot of it is we're having children later on in life. So this is a disease state that's evolving and growing even bigger and bigger as we change our demographics on when we start building a family, if we decide to do so.
it's as a guy having this conversation with me, I am so encouraged that there are others like you that understand that there are implications, there are quality of life implications to this. We talk about depression, and we know that it increases depression in women who have this type of condition because they begin to withdraw. They feel that midlife is actually the worst time of life because they now cannot do the same sorts of activities that they once engaged in, whether you were a runner or you played tennis or pickleball or what have you, or if you want to go to parties. And like Steve said, I had not heard about the pad smugglers, but that's a pretty extreme way in which to deal with your stress urinary incontinence. And and yet that's what women are doing. I'm not going to say that it's universally true, but obviously you're familiar with it, and I'm guessing that it is a best kept secret among women who have this condition. So the idea is, how do you solve the problem for stress urinary incontinence? Because it really is an issue of the pelvic floor. And if you are seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist or a urogynecologist who might have some way in which to intervene, it's a long process. Tell us about that.
Yeah, healthcare today, well, once you go from pads, you go under a physician's care. And there are four categories that we interact with, right? The first one are pessaries. And pessaries are everything from a Dunkin' Donut to a Rubik's Cube placed intravaginally to support the urethra. Great idea. It's been used for generations and generations. I mean, there are studies, there's research that has been done that talk about women using pebbles intravaginally back in the day to support this, lack of leaking. So the challenge with that is today's traditional pessaries are fitted by a healthcare provider. So you got to go in, get fitted, multiple different options. And the challenge is, if you're using a pessary, you stereotypically can't have intercourse. Now, some you can self-remove, but the majority of them you can't, right? So that is really not a great option, right? So there's no drug therapy today for this kind of disease state. So then you go to physical therapy, which is awesome, right? 12 weeks, you can get about a 10 to 15% improvement. That's fantastic. But it's like P90X, right? If you exercise and eat right, things get better. But the challenge with incontinence, it's a long path. And getting a 10% improvement after 12 weeks, stereotypically, most people have a very poor compliance, right? They go $50 copay twice a week. You're at week 6, you're not seeing a lot of improvement. You just say, it's just not working, and they quit. When I looked at the space, what I was trying to do and what my innovative side said to me is, what if I could take medically proven approaches that were once only available under a physician's care through innovation, taking it directly to the consumer? So what that triggered me was to research pessaries. And could I take a pessary through innovation, understanding the female anatomy? Could I create something that could be over the counter and be managed on a daily basis? And I started doing research here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We did clinical studies at the Cleveland Clinic, University of Penn Medical Center, West Virginia University Medical Center, and we finally got our product through the FDA. And what I tried to do was make it simple for all age demographics. If I could make it tampon-like placement, delivery, and removal, could I allow consumers to now do a medical approach uh, in private? And that's what we figured out. But more importantly, what we figured out was I could make a one size fit all kind of technology, right? So what this came out to be was I created a device called Revive that actually, instead, most pessaries are like corks, small, medium, and large. With this technology, we were able to say is a female, when she sits or stands, creates a natural pelvic shelf. So I created a ring design that the body envelops to hold it in place. So no longer is size important. And then at the distal or the operating end, it has like a little diving board to support the urethra. So what we were able to do is create a product for one size to fit most. And what makes it kind of cool is it's common, almost like a tampon. In the morning, you wake up, you place it in, you leave it in all day. You don't think about it. You're dry all day. At the end of the day, when you take a shower, you pull it out, you throw out the string. And what we tried to do is create a product that what should be reusable is reusable, and what should be disposable, disposable. So what we found is we could have a 31-day product, which takes you about $1 a day, and you replace the string every day. So now in the morning, you wake up, you use it, you're done, you throw out a cotton Dacron string, you wash it, you reload it, and for 31 days, you could have a product to satisfy your need. And it's much less expensive than a cup of coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or anywhere else. And now you're dry and managing your healthcare on your own. And that's kind of where we went, and we're kind of excited about. We're in the market today, and growing every day. What makes this so cool, or I'm excited about, is it gives you that relentless support. It's nonstop, right? You don't have to think about it, right? And you don't feel it, right? So where this fits in the female anatomy, it has no feeling, right? That the nerves and sensitivity are not in that region, right? It's more closer to the vaginal opening, but once you get deep enough in there, you don't feel it. So now you have mobility, you have comfort, and most pessaries are like corks, small, medium, and large. They're filling a circumferential area. So you're balancing performance and discomfort. And our device has none of those features. We are now not only more economical, but we take that psychological management out of your life. I got, where's the bathrooms at? You have to plan your event. Women that have sexual urinary incontinence think about it all day, right? Okay. A friend calls up and say, hey, let's go out for drinks. Okay. Where? When do I have to start dehydrating? What kind of clothes can I wear? What if I get wet laughing? Right? Okay. Where's the bathrooms at? Do I have to start this super dehydration? All these things go through a female's mind. And wouldn't it be nice to not think about it? Right? Wouldn't it be nice that you could think about the conversation with your friend versus the conversation of in your mind going, what happens if I leak? I don't want to be embarrassed. This is challenging. I have to wear certain clothes I can get away with. Even if you go to the gym, right? Do you have to wear a pad? What kind of clothes can I wear with the pad? Does it look unusual under my clothes, right? With this, it's totally intravaginally, nothing is seen, and it allows you to have regain that active lifestyle. It's a haunting disease state that's very quiet, and many women are told is part of life. And that's the wrong answer, right? Nothing is part of life, right? We can come and overcome it. Give yourself back that freedom.
You have validated all of our market research in some of your stories. So we, as Steve knows, we at FemPharma have been doing research, clinical research in the area of incontinence, a different type of incontinence, overactive bladder, but it's very consistent with what you just shared with us. Women change their habits because they are trying to determine how quickly they can reach a bathroom. If they have urge incontinence, they have to go, go, go. They are looking at ways in which to deal with dry mouth and to deal with constipation because those are side effects of pharmacologic treatments. So they adjust their entire lives to deal with a problem that really could be solved very simply. You mentioned something about pads and diapers that women are wearing, and unfortunately, there's another side effect that happens when you wear a pad or a diaper. You increase the risk of urinary tract infections, and if you have genitourinary syndrome of menopause, you probably already experience vaginal and vulvar dryness. Can you imagine wearing the pad all day long? Improves that? It doesn't. It actually exacerbates the condition. So, yes, you can use moisturizers and personal lubricants, etc., to address that. But wouldn't it be great if you could use those not to necessarily treat a condition that's been exacerbated, but to maintain that level of hydration while you are wearing this bladder support product? So these are innovations that women have been longing for, that have been they're very primitive in nature. You just heard about the pessaries and some of the other innovations. I'll use the word, generously. They're not necessarily innovations that women might want to comply with, but nonetheless, they haven't worked so well. They also require you to visit your healthcare practitioner, and perhaps their would need to be continuous innovation, or I should say, there would need to be continuous moderation of this sort of thing. The Revive product sounds like a great option for a woman with stress urinary incontinence. Yes, she might need some instruction from her healthcare practitioner or her pelvic floor physical therapist. And I know, Steve, you have interacted with pelvic floor PTs. And from what I understand, they use this in conjunction with the work that they do.
There's a whole subspecialty in healthcare today, in the physical therapy and occupational therapy side, that has they focus on the pelvic floor, right? And a group called Herman and Wallace, a major educator in this site, their professors were calling our company saying, "Hey, right, this is a miracle. Can we use it?" I'm like, "Well, why would you want to use it in your practice, and why would you want samples of our product?" He goes, "Steve, like I said earlier, they have it takes about 12 weeks to get about a 10 to 15% improvement." He goes, "We don't people are so, you know, frustrated that they don't make it to the end." So what we find is when those patients come to us diagnosed with, pelvic organ prolapse, early stage pelvic organ prolapse, or they have they have stress urinary incontinence, we give them that product right away in our office, and they go, "Oh my God!" They try to activate it, and they find out that it works. And they're like, "Oh my God!" They go home. So what that does for the physical therapist allows them to continue working on them over the 12, 15, 18 weeks to give them continuous pelvic floor strengthening and long-term improvement. So it started changing their practice because now patients are staying the course and finishing the pelvic floor therapy. And that's really important. We have a lot of urologists that use our product.
And our pelvic floor PT experts who will join us for another podcast will share more information about that. You don't have to give up anything. There's an intervention that's available. And this is an intervention that was created by a man for a woman. So I'm going to hitch up once again as the Renaissance guy because this is so important. We have had so many women CEOs, leaders, and founders, and I'm so proud of what women have done. But when I find a Renaissance guy like Steve Bollinger, I'm going to invite him to join the Love Mia Vita podcast. So, Steve, I want to
It's the
thank
most
you.
exciting thing I do, right? Like I said, I think women are so tough, right? And they MacGyver their life, right? I can do this myself. I don't need help. I've been taking care of my kids, my family, my husband. I take care of all these people. I take care of my parents. I take all these things, and they just push down the need to take care of themselves. And I think that they can do so much more and be so much happier if they weren't fighting nature, right? So this is just a bridge in care, trying to get them and maintain a quality of life as long as we can. As women age, they're all good because of the anatomy and because of the physiology of change, right? This organ that has supported you to give the gift of life uh, doesn't continue for your whole lifestyle. So you hit perimenopause sometimes as early as 35, and you're fighting this change. And we're living longer. Our quality of life should follow that healthy path, right? So these are just some ways of being proactive with our healthcare so we can continue having that strong, healthy quality of life and deal with the other challenges that come our way.
Absolutely. Steve, where can women find Revive?
Sure. So we have our website is www.userevive.com. We're on Amazon today, which is a blessing for us. Some healthcare providers carry it, physical therapists, OBGYNs, and urologists. And we're at walmart.com as well. So it's easily available. You can keep it private if you purchase it on Amazon or walmart.com on our website. It comes in a nice, discreet brown box on the outside. So when you receive it, you maintain your privacy as much as you can. We're growing. We're hoping in the next year or two, Target and Walmart, you'll be finding it on the shelves for you to make it even more convenient when you're doing those big shopping runs.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you once again, Steve Bollinger, for being my guest on the Love Mia Vita podcast. And again, this is an opportunity to love your life. That's what Love Mia Vita means. Take care, Steve. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Love Mia Vita podcast. Love Mia Vita means love my life, and that is a mantra we should all live by. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and check out our website at fempharma.com. Remember to live well and love Mia Vita.